Africa, a land bathed in sunlight, blessed with gold, oil, and diamonds, yet shackled by poverty. For decades, the world has watched Africa's wealth flow outward, its people left to struggle in the dust. But one man, a soldier from the heart of West Africa, dared to say no more. His name is Ibrahim Traoré, and this is the story of how a young captain, barely in his 30s, defied global powers and turned Burkina Faso's gold into a weapon of liberation. In the quiet lands of Burkina Faso, the earth gleams with gold veins that run deep beneath the soil. But for years, those veins fed not the people, but foreign corporations. Western mining giants, powerful investors, and shadowy intermediaries drained billions from the nation's heart, leaving behind only polluted rivers, broken land, and forgotten dreams. For the people, gold was a curse, not a blessing. The nation, once called Upper Volta, had endured coup after coup, famine after famine. Its children walked miles for water. Its farmers tilled the soil for pennies. And its leaders, most of them, bowed to the West in silence. But on a humid night in September 2022, something changed. In the barracks north of Ouagadougou, a group of young officers gathered around a dim lantern. Their commander, a 34-year-old artillery captain named Ibrahim Traoré, looked each of them in the eye. "Our gold feeds others," he said quietly. "Our people starve. If we do nothing now, Burkina Faso will never belong to Burkinabe again." They all knew what he meant. That night, tanks rolled through the capital. The old regime fell without mercy. And by morning, the red, green, and gold flag of Burkina Faso flew over a new chapter in history. The world called it another African coup. But to the people, it was a revolution. For the first time, they saw a leader who spoke their language, not the language of diplomats or donors, but of farmers, miners, and mothers. Traoré stepped forward not as a politician, but as a protector. "We cannot protect our people," he declared, "if we do not control our wealth." Those words echoed across Africa, through the streets of Bamako, Niamey, and Dakar, and soon, everyone began asking the same question. Could this young soldier really challenge the power of the West? Burkina Faso holds more than 60 active gold mines, most controlled by foreign companies based in Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. Together, these mines produce nearly 2 million ounces of gold annually, worth over $3 billion. Yet less than 10% of that wealth stayed in the country. Villages near the mines saw nothing but devastation. Water poisoned with mercury, forests stripped bare, families displaced to make way for foreign machinery. For decades, international lenders like the IMF and World Bank had offered assistance, loans with long, heavy chains attached. They called it development aid. But every dollar borrowed came with a demand. Sell your gold, privatize your land, open your markets to foreign investors. And Burkina Faso obeyed until Traoré arrived. One of his first moves as leader was radical and dangerous. He suspended dozens of foreign mining licenses, freezing billions in corporate assets. He ordered an audit of all existing contracts, some dating back to colonial times. When investigators uncovered secret clauses giving foreign firms up to 90% of profits, Traoré called it economic slavery. "We are not children," he told his ministers. "Our land is not for sale." Western media called him reckless, but to millions of Africans, he was a hero. To understand Traoré's courage, we must remember Thomas Sankara, the Che Guevara of Africa. In the 1980s, Sankara also led Burkina Faso with fire in his heart. He rejected Western aid, built schools and clinics, and told his people, "He who feeds you controls you." But Sankara's dream was cut short. In 1987, he was assassinated, many say with the help of foreign intelligence networks. His death became a warning to every African leader who dared to defy the West. And yet, decades later, his spirit returned. In the form of Ibrahim Traoré, many in Burkina Faso call him Sankara's son. Traoré himself often quoted Sankara's words in his speeches, "We must dare to invent the future. and that's exactly what he set out to do. Under Traoré's rule, the government began reclaiming state ownership of gold. Instead of exporting raw bullion, they established refining plants within Burkina Faso. Instead of foreign contractors, they hired local engineers and geologists. Every ounce of gold mined would now contribute to national development funds for hospitals, schools, and roads. The boldest move of all came when his administration announced the National Gold Reserve Project. For the first time in history, Burkina Faso would store part of its gold domestically, not in European vaults. That reserve, according to government data, quickly grew to represent over $18 billion in national value. The West panicked. Analysts in Paris and Washington warned that Burkina Faso was drifting toward authoritarian nationalism, but the people called it something else: independence. By 2023, something remarkable was happening. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, three landlocked nations plagued by coups, terrorism, and poverty, began to unite. They called their pact the Alliance of Sahel States, the AES. The alliance's message was clear. They would no longer bow to ECOWAS, the West African bloc heavily influenced by France and the EU. In fiery speeches, Traoré and his allies denounced ECOWAS sanctions and accused the organization of being a puppet of Western interests. "They isolate us," Traoré declared, "because we refuse to be their slaves." Crowds filled the streets of Ouagadougou, waving flags, chanting his name. Posters read, "Our gold, our blood, our future." Western diplomats warned of economic collapse. But instead, the three nations began to cooperate in trade, defense, and energy. They signed deals with Russia, Turkey, and China, sidestepping Western financial systems entirely. The world began to take notice. A quiet rebellion was spreading through the heart of Africa. Of course, the West didn't take it lightly. Behind closed doors, mining executives lobbied their governments. Intelligence agencies monitored every move. Foreign press painted Traoré as a dictator in uniform. But in Burkina Faso, the reality was different. In the villages, people finally saw roads being paved, clinics built with their own country's money. Teachers received salaries on time. Electricity reached neighborhoods that had lived in darkness for generations. Still, Traoré knew this. Victory was fragile. Terrorist groups in the Sahel, many with mysterious funding sources, began intensifying attacks. The timing was suspicious. Every time a gold shipment stayed inside the country, a new wave of violence erupted near the mines. Coincidence? Or a silent war to destabilize his government? "They will not stop until they take everything," Traoré warned his generals. "But we will not kneel." In one broadcast, Traoré addressed his nation directly. "The colonizer no longer wears a uniform," he said. "He wears a suit, speaks softly, and steals quietly." That quote spread like wildfire across African social media, a battle cry for sovereignty. For the first time, young Africans from Lagos to Nairobi saw a leader who spoke not of aid or charity, but of ownership, dignity, and power. The $18 billion gold revolution wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming identity. It was a declaration that Africa's destiny would no longer be written in Paris, London, or Washington, but in Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey. Power. It does not yield easily, and those who dare to take it back must be ready to pay the price. For Ibrahim Traoré, the battle for gold soon became a battle for survival, because every ounce of gold that stayed in Burkina Faso meant one less for the world's superpowers. As his policies tightened, global media unleashed a storm. Headlines in Western outlets called him Africa's dangerous young general. Pundits warned of a growing Russian influence and a return to military autocracy. But on the streets of Ouagadougou, none of that mattered. Mothers hung his portrait beside that of Thomas Sankara. Miners carried his image like a flag, and in dusty courtyards, children chanted his name. To them, Traoré wasn't a dictator. He was the first man who told them their suffering was not their destiny. Soon, the financial retaliation began. International banks quietly froze Burkina Faso's access to certain credit lines. Development funds were postponed. Mining investors fled, predicting economic collapse. But Traoré had anticipated this. He had already begun redirecting gold profits into a national stabilization fund, a backup treasury that would keep salaries paid and projects running without foreign aid. It was the first time in decades that Burkina Faso's economy ran on its own resources. Meanwhile, a silent economic war was unfolding in boardrooms thousands of miles away. Corporate lobbyists pressured Western governments to intervene. They couldn't accept that a small, landlocked nation could disrupt billions in global mining contracts. Some even accused Traoré of resource nationalism, as if wanting to own your own gold was a crime. The West underestimated him. They thought the young captain would fold under sanctions and pressure. Instead, he doubled down. "We have been told to depend on aid," he said in one televised address. But aid is a chain disguised as a gift. He was no longer just leading Burkina Faso. He was leading a movement. By mid-2023, the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, had grown stronger. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger began coordinating joint military operations to combat terrorism. Without Western oversight, they shared intelligence, equipment, and most importantly, a vision. Their joint declaration read, "We reject neocolonialism in all its forms. Our resources, our people, our sovereignty." In Niamey, the capital of Niger, crowds filled the streets, waving AES flags. Young men painted slogans across walls. No more masters, no more puppets. The symbolism was powerful. Three nations once dismissed as unstable, now standing shoulder to shoulder. Their unity terrified the West because it hinted at something unthinkable: a self-sufficient Africa. In one fiery meeting with local leaders, Traoré spoke words that would soon echo across the continent. "If we control our gold, we control our destiny. And if we control our destiny, they will no longer control us." Those words became a mantra for the new generation. A generation tired of watching ships sail away with their future. In Washington, analysts debated whether Traoré's government was sustainable. In Paris, diplomats scrambled to maintain influence in the Sahel, where France had once ruled unchecked. And in London, corporate executives watched their mining profits shrink. Burkina Faso's new policies had cost Western mining companies billions, overnight. Some countries imposed travel restrictions. Others threatened sanctions. But Traoré had found new allies in the East. Russia provided military support and training. Turkey offered construction and energy deals. China discussed infrastructure and gold refining partnerships. Burkina Faso was no longer isolated. It was simply shifting direction. The Western narrative painted this as a dangerous pivot. But to many Africans, it was poetic justice. For the first time, Africa was negotiating on equal terms, not begging. Then came the moment that would shock economists around the world. In a government announcement broadcast nationwide, Traoré revealed that Burkina Faso had secured over $18 billion in gold-backed reserves and state-controlled revenues. $18 billion, not borrowed, not gifted, but earned. That number rippled across the markets like an earthquake. Burkina Faso, a country once dismissed as one of the poorest on earth, had just achieved a financial milestone that many middle-income nations struggled to match. Analysts questioned the figure, calling it exaggerated. But within the nation, it wasn't about the exact number. It was about proof. Proof that Africa could rise without permission. The money was already transforming lives. New hospitals stood where none existed. Rural schools got electricity for the first time. Villages once forgotten by time had paved roads and clean water. Every brick laid, every road built, every clinic opened, was funded by Burkina Faso's own gold. The same gold that had once been shipped away in silence was now rebuilding the homeland. "We are proving," Traoré said in a speech, "that poverty is not our inheritance. It is their design." That line hit like thunder. Clips of the speech went viral. not just in Africa, but in New York, London, and Los Angeles. People began asking, who is this young African leader defying the global order? But revolutions are not fairy tales. With every step forward came resistance, not just from abroad, but from within. Some officials tied to the old regime resented the shift in power. Corruption lingered in the corners of government offices. Rebel factions, long fueled by chaos, saw opportunity in instability. As Traoré's popularity soared, so did the danger. Assassination plots were whispered about. Anonymous threats arrived. At military headquarters, foreign mercenaries began moving across Sahel borders. Still, the young leader refused to live in fear. "If they kill me," he told a journalist, "another will rise. You cannot kill an idea whose time has come. Every generation produces one leader who refuses to bow." For Burkina Faso, that man was Ibrahim Traoré. He had become a symbol, not of power, but of pride. A reminder that independence is not granted, it is seized. By early 2024, the landscape of the Sahel had transformed. ECOWAS, once the dominant regional bloc, found itself losing influence. The AES nations began planning a shared currency, backed by gold reserves instead of foreign banks. The symbolism was staggering. 3 nations that once begged for loans were now creating a financial system of their own, independent, sovereign, African. Western analysts called it risky. But in Africa, it was called freedom. And through it all, Traoré remained calm, often seen wearing his signature red beret, a nod to Sankara's revolution. In one of his last major speeches of the year, he addressed a gathering of students. "Our grandparents fought for independence with rifles. We fight for it with our minds, our resources, and our unity. The battle is not against the West. It is against our own surrender." The crowd erupted in applause. For many, these were not just words. They were a call to action. Today, as the world watches, the story of Burkina Faso continues to unfold. Whether you see Traoré as a hero or a rebel, one thing is undeniable. He changed the narrative. He reminded millions that a nation's worth is not measured by how much aid it receives, but by how much dignity it keeps. In the cities of the West, his image appears in documentaries, think tank debates, and political panels. But in the villages of Africa, his name is spoken like a prayer, a symbol of hope and defiance. The $18 billion gold plan is no longer just about Burkina Faso's economy. It's about rewriting the rules of power. If this movement succeeds, the ripple effects could transform the entire continent. From Ghana to Sudan, leaders are taking notes. From Nigeria to Kenya, citizens are demanding control over their own sources. And somewhere, deep beneath the Burkinabe soil, the gold still glows, no longer a curse but a promise. As the sun sets over Ouagadougou, the air hums with energy. Children laugh in new schools, miners return home safely, and roads glisten under streetlights built from the wealth of their own land. For the first time, Burkina Faso is writing its own story, not as a victim, but as a victor. They called us poor, Traoré said once, but gold was always beneath our feet. We only needed to believe we could claim it. The camera pans across golden fields and bustling streets, the pulse of a nation reborn. And then the final line. This is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of Africa's awakening. If you found this story powerful, share it. Let the world know what's happening in Africa's heart. Because this story isn't just about gold. It's about freedom. Like, comment, and subscribe to Untold Shades, where we bring you the stories the world doesn't want you to hear.